talk, I jumped at the chance to say yes, but then slowly but surely over time, imposter syndrome started to set in about talking to a large group of people about imposter syndrome. But it was really meaningful for me because I moved up to Chicago about 2 years ago now to do designation, and the first professional event that I went to was a ladies LTUX event, and it was where I met my eventual mentor and fellow Allstater, Pedro. So it was really cool to get to be able to do this as kind of a full circle way in my experience with UX designation. So I purposefully wanted to name this talk How to Embrace Imposter Syndrome, because as soon as I learned what imposter syndrome was and did more research on it, I saw a lot of articles about how to fight it, how to overcome it, how to beat it, and the more I thought about my own experience with it, the more I realized it was always associated with something that was pretty good in my life. A new job, or successfully completing designation, or some sort of just success that I had. So I thought, well, if I want to continue growing and I want good things to continue happening in my career, then imposter syndrome is probably going to continue to happen with that. So rather than fight with something the rest of my life, I'd rather just embrace it and learn how to cope with it. So I thought I'd start by level setting with a few facts that we know about imposter syndrome, the first of which is the actual definition of it. So imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts his or her accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. And I wanted to highlight those words, internalized fear. We'll come back to that in a little bit, but the more I thought about it too, the more I realized it really was just fear. Like, a lot of people equate it to the feeling of being afraid somebody's going to come up, tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you don't belong here, get out, you made a mistake, or something like that. And you might know if you've experienced it by realizing that you attribute some of your failures to an inner core of another. So what that means is, if you've messed up, there's a little voice in your head that says, oh, this happened because you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not creative enough, you're not whatever enough. And that voice is lying to you, but it's there nonetheless. And in addition to that, you're discounting all your successes as accidental. So every time you see any measure of success, there's another little voice that's saying, oh, it's just because of some circumstantial thing. So for example, you got a great job, like your mind is telling you they must not have had enough qualified candidates, or you got a promotion and you're telling yourself, oh, they must have just felt like it was finally overdue. So basically what that boils down to is every positive thing is a false positive, right? A way to work it out in your mind. And then just for history's sake, the term was actually introduced in the 1970s by two psychologists, Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Rice, and their publishing of The Imposter Phenomenon in High Achieving Women, Dynamics and Therapeutic Intervention. And I really wanted to include that for two words that are in that phrase. The first is phenomenon, and you might hear imposter syndrome also referred to as imposter phenomenon. I actually prefer the phenomenon version of the phrase because it's more applicable to what it actually is, which is something that applies to everybody. The phenomenon basically something we all experience versus the syndrome, something we typically associate with some sort of medical condition or disorder, which it's not. And then I also wanted to call out the fact that with this publishing being related to high-achieving women, there was a long-standing stereotype that imposter syndrome has only been something that women experience. And we know now through various studies that that's definitely not true, and experience it just as women. And then I found this graphic while I was doing my research too, and I just really like it. So it breaks down people who get imposter syndrome, other people who get imposter syndrome, and literally everyone else who also gets imposter syndrome. And so with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about my own experience with it. As you guys already know, I am a product designer at Allstate. I started working there in 2018, but it was a really windy and weird road to get there. I started out, I graduated from Purdue with degrees in business and public health promotion in 2014, and started working at a health insurance company right after I graduated. And the premise of my role was that I was in a management and training program. So every 6 months I rotated into leading a new department, which meant really trial by fire and just like learning to sink or swim really fast because I was always leading a team of people who were either like twice or sometimes 3 times my age, or daily roles, I really didn't know what they were until I got there. So, learned how to adapt really quickly, learned how to manage people, but also learned a lot of wrong ways to solve problems. So I started to research other things I wanted to do with my career, and that led me to finding user experience design and designation. And so I felt like I finally found what I wanted to do. I knew that it was going to be a pretty sizable investment of my time to make this entire career change, and so I thought, why not take some time to travel first? So that's what I did. I quit my job and moved to Australia for about 6 months. And as American citizens, we can do a working holiday visa in Australia for up to a year. So I thought, oh, I'll take 6 months and then skip winter, move back up to Chicago, and start this new career change. While I was over there, I primarily worked as a nanny for a family in Sydney, but picked up a lot of other random jobs along the way. Freelance writing, gardening, dog sitting, closet organizing, really whatever. And with each new role I took on, I had a level of, who do I think I am doing this, especially when it came to the freelance writing or anytime I was teaching yoga, I had this sense of, who do I think I am to even say I'm qualified to do this. And then eventually my time in Australia came to an end, moved back, came up to Chicago and started designation. Graduated, worked as a designer in residence for a little bit. I'm not sure that that position still exists, but it was just kind of a short-term thing after graduating before I eventually started my job. So hopefully you guys see the sense of the twists and turns my career has taken the past 5-ish years, and really with each of those turns came its own level of imposter syndrome, a feeling of, again, who do I think I am and call myself these things, especially when I got into the design world. I forgot to mention that fact. It wasn't until I got to the design world that I actually heard the term imposter syndrome and like, oh, that's what I literally felt every time I've taken on a new challenge or a new job. So at least I had a term for it at that point when I was still grappling with it. And then the real one hit when I started professionally calling myself a project designer at Allstate. And it was a really interesting first couple of months where that internalized fear piece is exactly what it was. I was internalizing everything I was going through, which was a new career, a new company, new teammates, new industry. It was a lot. And in addition to that, at Allstate we work in a methodology called XP, which means as designers, or as a designer, I work directly with another designer as my pair. To give you guys a sense of how closely we work together. This is how we're set up. We sit right next to each other, and at any one time, one of our machines is plugged in, and we're displaying the same thing on these two monitors, and one person is driving. So not only was everything new, I had a front row audience member for all my mistakes. And so, yeah, there was a good few months there where every day I was like, did they read my resume? Like, do they know who I am to design? Is somebody going to come up and tap me on the shoulder and ask me to leave? Because I was, the person I was working with was extremely talented, and I was just doing my best to get by at that point and really internalizing it a lot. What helped me the most, and sorry, Brian, I'm going to call you out. I'm not going to give any prep that I'm going to call you out. But at one point I was paired with Brian Cowley, and Brian has this really welcoming, fun, open personality. And just within a couple of days of working with him, he probably, I don't remember now if he asked me how I was doing or if I just finally felt like I had the space to say, I have imposter syndrome really bad. But either way, he immediately felt like somebody I could talk to about it. And just by talking about it, immediately had this weight lifted off my shoulders. And he could relate, and he's like, oh yeah, I've been through it, been there, happen all the time, no big deal. And that helped me a lot. So that kind of takes us into 4 strategies I found that helped me deal with imposter syndrome. And coincidentally enough, today during lunch I just Googled imposter syndrome, looked at the news, the most recent articles that have come out about it. And just today, a data analyst for the New York Times wrote their own article about their experience with imposter syndrome. It was a man that wrote it, and he had a background in theater. He was trying to be on Broadway, and then became a data analyst and went through his own grappling with imposter syndrome. And he wrote in his article about 2 strategies he found to be really helpful. one, self-reflection, and two, vulnerability. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, holy shit. These 4 strategies, like, literally divided into 2 being related to vulnerability and 2 being related to self-reflection. So maybe there's one of those good. But it also just a reminder, talked about it a lot, but imposter syndrome is an internalized fear. So keep that in mind as we're going through. So this first one relates back to the story I was just talking to you guys about. In terms of, if you have it, I think the best thing, at least for me, was to talk about it, to actually say the words out loud. And there was one thing to talk about it with Brian, but it took me baby steps to get there. One thing about going through, I think, any kind of boot camp, but in my experience going through designation, I've actually heard the term before used, it can be a factory of imposter syndrome, right? Because you're going through a big thing and you're starting out in a completely different field with a completely different skill set, and you're coming out at the other end and you're like, oh my gosh, suddenly I'm trained to do all these things really well, but like it takes your brain some time to catch up. And so having my cohort mates talk to me about it was great, but then also being able to talk with the professionals that I was working with was even better. One note I want to make about this too, Alicia's going to make fun of me, but I'm a teacher named Brown, and I don't know if anybody in this room has read her books, seen her TED Talks, or her recent Netflix special, but if you're not familiar with her work, her main thing is that you can't have courage without vulnerability. You have to be vulnerable to have any active bravery. And so when I thought about these strategies, and I thought about just the idea of talking about imposter syndrome out loud, was when I realized that's really what vulnerability was for me at that time. It took a layer of just saying, I'm going to be vulnerable, I'm going to throw this out there and see where it gets me, and somehow it's gotten me to talking about it in front of a whole group of people that may use LTUX, so you never know. But I think the important point there too is I firmly believe that with any step of growth in your career, it's going to take an active bravery, right? Like to expand your skill set, to push yourself into furthering your boundaries of what you do. It takes bravery. You can't have that vulnerability versus Brene Brown says. So talking about imposter syndrome is one good exercise. The second one is similar. Be aware of your blind spots, meaning in addition to talking about it, just admitting that you have imposter syndrome to somebody. The other thing I think that makes imposter syndrome so scary or so furious is you're worried about what everybody else around you is thinking, maybe specifically your boss or who you directly report to, and concerned with like, is my performance meeting their expectation? Maybe if I'm an imposter. Easiest way to get rid of that, ask them. Become aware of your blind spots. Have an honest conversation with them if there's something you need to be aware of. Some really good questions that I found from other people who have used the same strategy are, where have I had the most impact over the past few months? Where did I have more of an impact? What kinds of things, from your perspective, do I have a habit of missing or dismissing too quickly? Am I meeting your expectations? And what would it look like for me to be twice as good at what I do? Some questions that are just conversation starters, and hopefully y'all work at a place where you have leadership who isn't afraid to give you the honest feedback, so then you either know by their reaction, yeah, there's some things worth taking a look at and working harder on, or the case might be their expression is complete bewilderment, and you recognize, oh, all of this is just kind of living in my mind. Oh, I forgot about this reference. I made that and something else today. Okay, sorry about this. It's a very niche SpongeBob reference that, as I was also thinking about another strategy, the part about creating a relationship with it. So this kind of has its basis in cognitive behavioral therapy. So in terms of once you recognize that you have imposter syndrome, you start to realize the patterns that spark it, right? So those thoughts of attributing all your failures to an inner core of numbness or all your successes to accidents. And so many times, and the people who I've most closely confided with about having imposter syndrome, their response to me is, it's evil Rachael in her head. It's her telling me lies about what your failures are, what your successes are. So I kind of took that idea of evil Rachael and said, what would she look like? And my immediate cognitive response was, she looked kind of like Doodle Bob from SpongeBob. And if you're not familiar with these this SpongeBob character in one of the episodes, SpongeBob finds the magic pencil, draws himself, and comes to life, and wreaks havoc on his life. And so I thought immediately, that's what evil Rachael is. That's what she does with my imposter syndrome, is completely wreaking havoc. And then the last one is reframing it. So I talked about at the beginning why I think it's important to consider embracing imposter syndrome rather than fighting it away, is because you might find, or if you're thinking about your own experience with it, the correlation with something good happening, the promotion, the new job, whatever it is. And so if it's something that's associated with success, it should almost be something that's celebrated rather than hated. At least that's the way I've tried to work my mind around thinking of it. And again, it's something where I feel like if I want to continue to grow my career and do well, then it's probably going to come around a few more times. And the other piece of that too is there's an effect called Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's essentially the opposite of imposter syndrome. It's where you overinflate your cognitive abilities rather than underestimate them. And so as soon as I learned about that, I thought, I'd much rather be the person in the room who's thinking they might not know enough to be in it and questioning that, rather than being the person that walks in the room and thinks they know everything, more so than the other people in the room. So another way that I reframed it was like, I guess if I had to choose between the two, I'd rather feel like an imposter. That's what I got for you guys today. Thank you for listening, and I think at this point what we're going to do is take a quick break, allow you guys to get more refreshments, and then we'll start with the fireside chat.
Interested in talking to. But really, I kind of wanted to set the tone with fireside chat. I got really lucky to be a part of a fireside chat that was all women about a year ago, and it was probably the best panel or speaking opportunity I've ever been involved in, because everybody had very real, like radically real answers. And it's nice in a group like this because it's pretty small and it's pretty intimate. So I know Rachael, we've already talked about this together, she's going to be very open and honest and vulnerable, as she talked about earlier. So I want you guys to please ask questions, feel like you can be vulnerable in this group of people. We're talking about failure, so I want you to remember that as we do that through this whole process. And after we do the networking during that time too. So we'll go ahead with that said. Our mindset, right? We'll go ahead and dive in. So, I think that imposter syndrome has a lot of emotions, right? There's fearfulness, there's, the lack of support or confidence in yourself. But the big thing at the core of it is failure, right? I'd love to hear how you define failure in your terms.
Yeah. So I thought a lot about this, and I first tried to define what success for me was before I could define what failure for me is, and it's a tricky question. I think what I've come to terms with is failure has to be defined by each person individually, and for me, I feel the most like I've failed when I've stopped trying and not learned anything, when I've basically given up. So as long as I can take some sort of learned experience away from whatever the failure is, and I say failure in quotes because again, that's the importance of defining it for yourself versus letting other people define it for you. But as long as I stay true to what I think it is for me, and what that means is going through something and not living up to my own expectation for how I would have liked to have done in that situation, and also not learning anything from it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, that it's really your own experience and what you think. And I think that it's different for every single person here, so I totally agree with you on that. I think another thing that we kind of feel with imposter syndrome is regret. Regretful that we didn't take that opportunity, regretful that we did take that opportunity that it didn't turn out like we thought. how have you been in situations, with that feeling, knowing you maybe missed a chance or you should have done something better? How did you deal with the regretfulness that you felt from imposter syndrome?
Very slowly. Definitely can be the type of person that holds on to regret for longer than they should. For me, the best way that I can cope with something like that is, it kind of goes back to the evil Rachael example I gave in the presentation of having a support system and people in my life that will call me out when I'm saying the things out loud that are evil Rachel's thoughts or whatever, when I'm being the hardest on myself, basically, and not showing myself any kindness. So if I have to get through something where I've made a decision and I'm looking back on it and really wish I had done something different, the first and foremost thing I have to do for myself is just try to be kind and really try to frame it in the way that I would tell somebody I love what advice I would give to them, or what, how I would reassure them that, yeah, you messed up, but it's not the end of the world, and here's the steps you can take to get yourself through it. And that's really what it boils down to, is just trying to really be as kind to myself as possible in those situations.
You talked about advice just a second ago. I think advice goes a long way, especially when you are lucky enough to get advice from someone who is admirable to you, right? Can you share with us maybe some of the best career advice you've gotten?
Yeah. Thinking about that too, my immediate response to that question, the story that always sticks out for me is when I was first working at the health insurance company right after graduating. My first rotation in the management program was leading a team of account managers. And I remember one day I was on the phone with one of the account managers. Something had gotten messed up for her. It really had nothing to do with me, but I was apologizing to her. And she stopped me in my tracks and she said, "Hey, this isn't your fault. Don't apologize for it." And then she kind of gave me a 5-minute, women apologize way too much for things that aren't their fault. And I was just kind of whoa. I felt like she kind of smacked me in the face and I needed it. So it was good. And I've carried that with me. I remember it very distinctly. I will say it was great advice. I still apologize all the time, but at least I catch myself doing it, and I catch when other women are doing it too, and I notice it now all the time. So it's true, we do. We apologize a lot for things that aren't our fault necessarily, and then so that's always my immediate thing that I think back to of the piece of advice that just really struck a chord with me. But then the other thing also is just more a personal thing to me, because with imposter syndrome, in the most visceral way that I felt it when I started working at Allstate, was that I couldn't speak in meetings. If I was in a group with the other designers, I physically could not bring my opinion to the table or talk. It was really hard for me for a while. And if I was one-on-one, no problem. Could totally be myself, let my personality out, didn't care. But something about being in a room with a large amount of people just kind of silenced me. And I thought about that a lot, and I was like, oh man, you've got to start speaking up, you've got to talk more, you have to make your voice known. And then I almost counter-argued that against myself, because I thought about it more and I realized I like being in the person in the room that's listening the most and talking when I feel like I want to talk, but not feeling the pressure of I need to talk just to be heard. And so I think there was a happy medium between those two things and getting past the imposter syndrome and feeling like I can use my voice, but not feeling some sort of outside pressure that I needed to speak just to be performing, if that makes sense. So those have been two things for me.
I think that's actually really neat to hear you say that, because I think that in that point of time when you felt very paralyzed, by this feeling that you should be doing something that you're not doing, instead you completely, reversing that and saying, my strength is actually that I'm an amazing listener. And that's what I do well in a group. That's really, I think, hard for people to do. We were just talking about it the other day. We were talking about women in technology, whether it's that is design, or you want to be an engineer, or you want to do data science. Talking about how so many times they don't take that leap, and if they do, they're not sure what to do with it afterwards. And it kind of sounds like similar to that situation. You got to that point. You did all those things. You moved to a different country. You came here. You went to a school you didn't know about. And then you were like still stuck. And so I think that's really powerful to hear you say that you unstuck yourself by actually reversing that situation. I think that's really hard, and it's really admirable to hear you say something like that. I know that you failed a lot, right? Because we all have. What is like the biggest failure that like you still maybe to this day try to get over kind of throughout your whole career?
It's a really hard one because I'm not really sure that I've had some sort of grand catastrophe happen that had a huge audience for it. So it's more like it's been continual small failures over time, that it's just like the same thing that we do in product design. It's the same thing we do with product mindset. It's build, measure, learn. It's try, see how it goes. If you fail, learn from it and move on. So I really tried to use that throughout every decision I've made in my career, because that's exactly what I was stuck in when I was working at the insurance company. I knew I didn't want to be there forever. I was learning a lot. I was learning a lot of soft skills. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't know that I was necessarily learning the best way to solve problems, but I was learning a ton of soft skills on how to manage people. One really strong example of kind of taking the build, measure, learn and failing and bouncing back from it was one of my rotations in that company was to lead a small clinic of about 18 doctors and nurses, and like a month into being in that role, I found out we were selling it to the local hospital. And so I'd been there a very short amount of time, and it was suddenly on me to let all these people know that the clinic was being sold and their jobs were in question, and there was really no reassurance that they were going to get to keep them. And there were not a lot of great answers to all the other questions that come with that for them. So I was immediately in a position where I had to learn how to empathize. I learned to empathize with them really fast because people were coming into my office crying all the time. But I also had to figure out how to best reassure them, but not give them false hope, because things were in question for like months. So I also learned for myself how not to take care of myself in that instance, actually, because I was feeling their emotions so deeply that my job wasn't actually in question, but feeling their stress and panic every day, I totally lost sight of myself in it and didn't know how not to absorb their stress. So that was one thing for me that was like a daily build, measure, learn, or try something, try to help them, try to reassure them, see how they reacted, see what more information I could get for them, see how I could better advocate for them, see how I could just be a better leader for them, and evolve as I went through it. The beginning of it was rough, right? I got down there a month in, and I was thrown into it, and I was just like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do to help them out, but it was just a constant get better over time.
Yeah. I just feel stressed thinking about
the
situation.
Sorry, that's because I get stressed out when I think back to it, man, I was rough.
But you're a human, and also you're a woman too. I think that a lot of times that happens. We are the folks that, not saying this doesn't happen with men, but primarily that take on those feelings and a lot of that empathy. Just somehow fall into that place. Which is a strength, by the way. That is a power, that's a superpower. I'm not saying it in a negative way. When do you feel like were some of the most transformative times for you? I don't know if you can ask everyone this, because I lived a pretty boring life. I didn't go to Australia, and I didn't try all these different cool things, but you got to do that, and that's amazing. In all those different places, what were the most impactful? What were the biggest aha moments for you throughout this whole time?
For me, and it's part of the reason why in the definition of imposter syndrome, I wanted to specifically call out the words internalized fear. The biggest moments for me have been anytime I looked fear in the face and just said, get out of my way, and never has been easy. It's still not easy. But I think that's why it's important has been important for me to learn more about imposter syndrome, to try different strategies, to look that fear in the face and try to move it aside. But those impactful moments for me were when I first proved to myself that I could do things that either nobody thought I should do or could do. So that in a large way included traveling. And I didn't mention this in the presentation, but the first big one for me in that was I took 2 months to backpack by myself after college, and the number of people in my family that were like, what are you doing? And you're a girl, you cannot go to, I went to Southeast Asia, they were like, you cannot go there by yourself. And I believed them at first, and I was kind of like, okay, yeah, that's probably too crazy. But then I researched it more and met people who had done it. Actually, I met one person who did it, and as soon as she told me it was possible, I was like, boom, done, sold, I'll be there. And it was really crazy because up until like 2 days before I left, again, my family, love them to death, we're all very close, but I'm getting like voicemails from my extended family, like, you can't do this. And 2 days before I left, sure enough, Thailand declares martial law, and like the state is in complete disarray. And then I'm getting a ton more voicemails, and not sure what to do. Like, these are people I love, and I care about their advice. But at that point, I just had to say, like, everybody's making this out to be really scary. I'm going to stay true to what I think is possible, what I can do, and I did it. I got over there. I was fine. The same thing happened when I decided to move to Australia. Again, like, I kind of mentioned this, but it became who do I think I am to do these things? Like, from a small town in Indiana, like, I don't know many other people from where I'm from that have gone and done these things. I know lots of people do them, but I didn't have a ton of personal close examples. So there was a ton of fear for me in trying it and just seeing how it went. But those for me were the most transformative moments of when I could prove it to myself that just by like exercising the muscles, not giving into fear, it got better over time.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of a book. Have anyone in here read You Are a Badass?
Love that book.
I feel like I can tell that you read it because
it's amazing.
I was thinking about you as we were saying that. In the book, she talks a lot about when someone's about to make a really big decision in their life, that the universe will do everything it can to stop you.
Yeah.
Whether that's people in your life who are not necessarily supportive, and most of the time it's out of a good place, right? Or it's some weird happening. In the book, she talks about this guy who was in her office, and he wanted to have his own business, and he literally walked outside and got hit by a bus. And he was like, you know what, screw it, I'm still going to do it. And then now he's a millionaire, right? Like, not all stories are like that, but it just is the moral, right? It goes back to this thing that says, people that you admire, you love, you trust, kind of like really discounting you and saying, oh no, making you question, and then you go back in your mind and you think, I can't do this. It's at that point that you say, yes, I can. Right?
Absolutely, because I love that story in the book, and she also talks about, because it disrupts everybody's idea around you of what status quo is, right? Like, they've made their decisions, and they might not be considering the same options that you are, so as soon as you do something radical, they try to force you back into the mainstream, the status quo, and they're kind of like, oh, you're challenging my own, they internalize it themselves, you're challenging my beliefs. It's kind of what my family was doing to me. They were like, I was like, I want to go through this radical thing and travel. And they're like, but you're challenging my beliefs of a vacation is actually just going to Europe for a week or whatever, Florida. And so, yeah, it absolutely. As soon as I read that book and started paying attention to it, I feel it all the time. Like, anytime you want to disrupt that, you'll feel the universe, whatever you want to call it, whatever's around you, kind of push back on you. Yeah.
But at that point, you say no. You're going to go do it, right?
Easier said than done.
Yeah, same thing happened to me. I was from a small town in Ohio. I wanted to work at a company that was just starting. It was called Spot Hero. And they were like, hell no, you're not doing that. You're not going to go work at a startup. That's not going to work out. They're going to fail. Well, Spot Hero showed them. And Australia showed them. And then all the other things that you did. So, moral of the story is don't let people hold you down for something you really want to do. I want to ask a couple more questions, and I definitely want to make sure we open it up for people to ask you questions. Actually, let's just go with the last one, because I want to give you guys plenty of time. what are like calls to action, small things people can do every single day to really, eliminate imposter syndrome and that bias with themselves. Things that you've done, whatever you think, tell us what we can do.
Yeah, beyond like kind of the strategies I mentioned at a higher level, like the two most actionable things I think that have really helped me is if you're a journaler, like if you like to write, just writing in general can be great and really therapeutic, right? With like no format, but if you even struggle to write but want some sort of like guidance to do it, when I did a yoga teacher training, my teacher had us every day write down something to celebrate, something to let go of, and something you desire. So you just write the sentence, I celebrate, ... whatever. I let go of whatever, I desire whatever. And so it kind of goes, this is something that's really great that I want to appreciate the moment of, and then this is something that's just kind of dragging me down that I'd love to get rid of. And then something you desire is kind of like the manifesting piece of it, right? Like you're putting it out into the universe, I want this thing to happen, whatever it is. And so that, for me, is a way to help with imposter syndrome, but also just in a technical, like writing down format kind of way. Something I've started to do is like, when I'm feeling like an imposter syndrome in a certain scenario, I write down, I feel like an imposter because blah, blah, blah. And then I write down, I'm not an imposter because blah, blah, blah. And then like physically make myself like come up with the reasons I'm not actually frauding anybody. And that just helps. It helps kind of clear my mind. And then the other main thing I would say is if you're into meditating, like that is also like, if you've not tried it, I highly recommend it in terms of just like calming down your mind and giving yourself some space, some mental space to breathe.
What questions do you guys have? We want to make sure that it's, engaging. So who has a question? I know somebody has. Yes.
Do you have any tips on how to like advise or mentor someone like in a work setting with imposter syndrome?
People I work with? What? Because we do yeah, actually, Dustin, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I'm fortunate enough to work with Rachael actively. It's one of those things where it is so cool to see you up here doing this, because knowing of this, like the conversations we had about like imposter syndrome, it really is as simple as it is, like just talking about it. It's me even, I had a friend of mine that's like a clinical psychologist come in to Allstate and talk about imposter syndrome. It was really cool. We even had a company picnic happening that day and everything. And even our VP was talking about this is a very thing that we deal with on a regular basis. And it really is just like talking through it. That it is, you were calling it like evil Rachael. I just call it evil SOB in my head. And it's just like, it's almost like once you acknowledge this thing and you can put a label on it, it's not scary anymore. It's just like, I don't know, if a monster with a sign hanging around it that says monster, it's not scary. And then just being honest with yourself about it. I think that's really about the size of it. It's just like talking through it and realizing you're not alone with it. If anybody says that you're not experiencing it, that's not true.
Yeah, it really just boils down to like creating the space, right? Creating the space for them to feel safe to talk about it and get it out of their own heads.
Who else? Don't be afraid to ask.
I have one.
Yeah.
So it goes really well with that question that Jordan just asked, but which I probably do have imposter syndrome, I know I do, if I went to my manager, I feel like I would be asking him, or maybe he would feel like I was asking him to just sit me down and tell me how great I was. That's how I feel like the conversation would go, not because my manager is a bad person or not because like I'm fishing for compliments, but that's like my mental block on ever bringing it up with someone who's more senior than I am or someone who's in like a management role. So I'm wondering how you got past that and then maybe how you phrased the conversation when you first brought it up.
Yeah, not sure I did a great job of that, to be honest. And that's why I think like the questions that I mentioned in the presentation are something worth trying out, because it's a little bit more than, because you're right? Like, you don't want to just open up the space to be like, oh, you're really great, because you also don't want to have them feel like, or put them in a space where you're just looking for a confidence boost. Yeah. So I think really asking questions like, what have you noticed that I might be dismissing too quickly? Or what would it look for me to have done like twice as well on this project? Things that are like really specific and targeted to that, because that becomes harder to like wrap a nice little bow on and be like, it's great, like whatever. I'm trying to think back if I asked you any really great questions like that. I found these way later, but I don't think I did. Other than, there might have been times I really just said, I'm feeling a little bit like an imposter syndrome on this one thing we've been working on today, because I've never done it before, or I know I'm not really strong in it yet. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Something I'll say, my background isn't in design, it's mostly just hard tech, like software engineering. And so to experience designation was really cool. And I have to say that the designers in this room, we need you to like come on our teams and tell us how to do this stuff. I have never talked to people so much so who are adaptable to co-creation and have taught me how those certain things of how do we talk to one another, how do we engage in feedback with one another, how do we actually really listen. I just wanted to take a second to give props to the designers in the room, because that's something that you very much so taught someone who has nothing to do with that world. So thank you for that, because I feel like that is so integral to this sort of stuff. It's such a part of everything that we do beyond what we do for our customers, right? So I just wanted to say that because it made me think of that. So props to you guys for doing that. I think the company should listen to you more in HR about how you can help with employees in imposter syndrome. It's done a number with our organization. Yeah.
Related to the last question that you were asking, I think there was something I can't get it out of my head. A great conversation we had once before, where I think you nailed it for yourself once. It wasn't like having a conversation was about like, look at the good job that you're doing or that you're doing all that. It was like, well, why is it out there in the first place? And I remember just like talking with you, like we were playing like Donkey Kong Country, like having our one-on-ones. But I remember that you were just almost like, you had gotten to this point of like, why is that thought even there? It wasn't about like doing a good job or a bad job. It was like, wait a second, this is not useful.
Yeah. Oh, that gets deep into like some things around like acting without expectation. It kind of gets deep into like some Eastern philosophy stuff in terms of like acting or doing something, let's say something at work, some task, without any expectation of evaluating it as good or bad, or feeling the need to label it, I've done a good job or I've done a bad job, which is acting for action's sake. Hard thing to do. Really hard thing for me to do. Like even to take that one step further, it's almost like take it to a place of really acting with no recognition of any kind of feedback and just saying like, I did it, it's out there, it exists, moving on. I think it's a good practice to try, for sure. It takes a lot of practice though.
We have time for one more question. Does anyone have anything? Yeah.
There's a lot of us here from designation who are job hunting right now. So I was wondering if you had any advice when you're interviewing for getting over imposter syndrome, especially if you from if you've shifted careers or coming from a boot camp background or in that traditional path.
Yeah. Biggest piece of advice on that is I'm making an assumption here, but at least for me in the case of interviewing right after completing designation, the imposter syndrome came specific to design skills, like the hard skills associated with becoming a designer. From my experience interviewing with most of the companies that I did, and especially with Allstate, hard skills were, yes, there and they cared about it, but the soft skills piece is 10 times more important. And they really just want to know that you can be a good teammate, interact, and be empathetic, be somebody who has a growth mindset, who's not going to stay stagnant, things like that. So I would say for me, the most important thing to getting out of my head in terms of imposter syndrome in interviews was to really go through the other skills I was bringing to the table in terms of soft skills rather than hard skills.
Good question. Anyone else? Awesome. Well, let's give Rachel a round of applause. So please go ahead and hop out to the other area that we were in before. That's where we'll do the networking. So please stay and join us for another half an hour or so. We have the space and have fun.